Right, just getting used to getting back in front of the camera. God, I don't think I'll ever be used to this, but here's to hoping, eh? Welcome back to Goldilocks Original. I am Rose, as you should know by now. Oh, if you don't, hi, I am Rose. And welcome to my first official sort of video back. I did have a I'm back video last week, but this is my first official video of what I'm dedicating this channel to at the moment, which is working on my novel as well as doing research and inspirations research. So that means kind of like book reviews on like fictional stuff a little bit there, things that will aid me in creating my own world a little bit, like things that have inspired me. So I think I explained that a little bit in my I'm back video, but that's just a brief summary. And I will be getting into why I am having an inspirations book reviews kind of thing in the future. I'll probably explain more in my recap of what's happened in the last 3 years, but for now it's kind of book reviews and things what I've taken from these books that I might implement into my own book. So without further ado, let's get into the topic of this first book review. So today we're going to be talking about who is quickly becoming one of my favourite writers, Nikita Gill. And we're talking about the first book that I've read from her that I've recently finished 2 weeks ago, and that is The Fierce Fairytales and Other Stories to Stir Your Soul. So before I go on to talk about the contents of the book and my thoughts and opinions and what I've taken out from this book, I'm just going to quickly read the blurb. I was going to call it the black blurb, but I was like... So I'll just quickly read it. Feminist fairy tales for young and old. Await no princess to save you. Through their lips touching yours whilst you're in an unwilling slumber. Wake each other up instead. Step into this world of empowering, reimagined fairy tales where stereotypes of obliging lovers, violent men and girls need rescuing are transformed into brave princesses, blurred lines between heroes and villains, and a courageous Gretel who brings down monsters on her own. So that kind of gives you sort of a feel of what the contents of this book is. I'm going to go into a few stories that I really liked, especially the top 3. But one of the things that I took out of this is that when you hear feminists nowadays, unfortunately you always think of just women's rights or empowering women, but that's not the feel I got from this, and I think that's what we're trying to understand about feminism nowadays. Like, I will call myself a feminist now, but probably last year I was very scared of using that word because we always sort of associated it with demonising men and bringing men down or telling men off for acting this way, and feminism I am beginning to realise and learn myself and get away from that sort of mindset is not all about that. It's just treating all genders equally in the same way, giving them the same rights as well as thoughts and consideration to both genders, and not just genders but races and gender identities and all that stuff. And the thing that really put the nail, not the nail on the coffin, but really emphasised that is that there's a story in here that really tugged on my heartstrings, and it was from Jack and the Beanstalk, and it focuses on Jack himself. Hold on, I'm going to see if I can get it up. Here we are. So it basically, I'm not going to read all of it, but it basically goes through Jack's perspective and why he kind of went up the beanstalk, and also talks about his like mother as well. Like his mother was abusive, and then the father left because I think it was due to the abusive father. It's been a while, like once I get going reading something I'll be alright. Yes, his father died. There we go. His father died in this story. Yeah, got ya. And the father was always trying to like reassure him, like, I'm sorry that your mother's the way she is right now. And his mother in this story is an alcoholic. And I think this last fifth to last paragraph, because it ends with a little bit of a poem, really like spoke to me. And it wasn't about the beans. It never was. It was about being better than both his parents. It was about not tiptoeing around who he was to please someone else. It was about turning from victim to survivor. And I loved that because it has such a huge weight but relief at the same time, especially for anyone who's been in that situation. And I love that Nikita Gill told it from that kind of perspective, and not only that, but from a boy's perspective, because you'll probably, when you go to read some of her stuff, like if you've never read any of her stuff, you'll think, oh, she's a big time feminist, always empowering women and always trying to like demonize men, and she's not. Like, I think I can understand that way of thinking, but people kind of like trick themselves into thinking that when it's really not. And I think that this story, along with other stories that she has in there, really establish that, and establish that feminism isn't about demonizing men 24/7, it's about empowering everyone. So yeah, that's what I really like. That's one thing that I took away from this book, is that she gives every fairy tale character that she touches upon a voice. Predominantly it's females, because unfortunately most of the fairy tale characters that we know of, they're often victimized in the, like, I respect the old fairy tales that were written by the Grimm brothers and etc. But as we've developed in time, as we've grown and learned how to take care of ourselves, both women and men, you look back on those fairy tales and you're just like, huh, right. So Sleeping Beauty goes into a sleep, and the only way she can wake up is because of a man kissing her without consent. So yeah, I love this book just because it does give a different take on the fairy tale characters, and it just gives everyone more of a voice and humanizes more of the characters more, and you have reasons for each character for being the way they are. Even the villains, like she has, like, there's a couple of letters from villains to the heroes of the characters, like Mother's Tale, so Cinderella's stepmother, and also Cinderella's mother sent her a message from heaven. Lessons from the Not So Wicked Witch for Dorothy, so that you get all the perspectives that you learn of. They all seem like someone that you know, that you can understand why they became the way they are, you can understand why they became the villain, why they became the hero, and it adds more authenticity. Whereas in the original fairy tales, totally respect them, but they're like, this person's evil because they're evil. Why they're evil? Is there a reason why they're evil apart from the fact that they're a woman? And they're old and they're not married? Or they're married but they're married for financial gain? And I'm like, come on, there's got to be more to it. And I love that Nikita has given us that, but she's hasn't given us more, but she's given us, in a way, a new perspective that allows our brains to think more about it, if that makes sense. So I wrote down in my Instagram post that the one thing that I love about Nikita is she uses beautiful simplistic words, but she doesn't outright describe the scene, she doesn't outright go into much detail of the scene. She lets, her words are so powerful in their simplicity that it invokes images in your mind on its own. Like, you can set the scene, your brain sets the scene for you, and you feel like you're really there. And that's what I really love about Nikita, and that's what I'm going to be taking away from that as well. Like, don't go too over dramatic and don't go into too much details unless it's necessary. Just trust your reader a bit more and let them see the scene how they want to see it. Don't go overly descriptive. In my top 3 favourite short stories and poems from Nikita Gill's Fierce Fairy Tales are Once Upon a Time Part 2. I've written it on my Instagram, so I'm just looking on there. Rapunzel, Rapunzel, and The Moon Dragon. And I'm going to read a few of the lines of each one to show why and explain why that I really liked this. So let's go to Once Upon a Time 2, or Part 2. I've been calling it Part 2 in my head, but it just says 2. It's like 2, like the 1. So Once Upon a Time 2. And I think, which one was my favourite? I think it was just like the opening line, because you have Once Upon a Time first, and it goes into the universe and how the universe created you and how you're made of stardust and that. It does say that, doesn't it? Yeah, it does. Does it? Well, it basically says you're a part of the fairy tale, and the universe created all these planets and all these people, and they created you, sort of thing. And then it goes into Part 2, and the opening line to this is what really, like, I'll just read it and then I'll explain. But the universe never promised you this would be easy. After all, you are the hero here, and heroes are meant to be forged golden from the blaze. And I really like this one because there's an ambulance going by. I really like this one because this opening 2 paragraphs, because it, once again, she uses so much simplistic words and it invokes these images in your head. So when she says, but the universe never promised you it would be easy, so my brain, when I read that, it went through all the things that I've personally been through and all the struggles that I've had to endure, and you know, it's not easy, life is not easy, no one's ever going to promise you to be easy, so it rings true, that one. So that's the thing that I immediately thought of, all the shit that I've been through, and I was like, you know what, she's right there. And then she ends that first paragraph saying, after all, you are the hero here. And it is true, like, unfortunately the villains never think they're the villains, but they're not technically the villains either. I wrote this quote once that the hero in your story can easily be the villain in another person's story, and so no matter what, unless they're an abusive, murdering psychopath that is in prison, everyone thinks they're the hero in their own story, even if they have hurt people, maybe like lying to them or something like that. People are going to think they're the hero in their own story, but they're going to be the villain in another person's story, and that's how it goes. Like, I'm probably the villain in someone else's story, and they're probably the villain in mine, like, and it isn't easy, and we learn from our mistakes, and that's what I took from that first paragraph. I'm like, yeah, that is true. And then she goes on to the second paragraph, and heroes are meant to be forged golden from the blaze. And first thing that pops into my mind every time I read that second paragraph is a sword. I don't know why. I think it must be like when you forge in the sword, like with fire and everything, that's where the golden from the blaze. That's what I immediately think of. And she doesn't actually directly say a sword, and I think that's really interesting. My mind went there, And so that's what I really liked, and I like the rest of what she says in that as well. She does mention a sword later on, but I think of the sword automatically before she even mentions it, which is really genius of her. She uses words so brilliantly that you think of things before they're actually even mentioned. So that's what I like from her. And then the second one that is my favourite is Rapunzel and Rapunzel. And it's basically talking about her relationship with Gothel, her mother, or the person that raised her. And I actually published this quote on my Instagram because I nearly cried when I read it, because it springs so much truth behind them. It springs so much of a heavy realization to anyone who has read these words and has been in a bad situation with a parent or both. And yeah, I'll just read it out so then you can see what I mean. Sometimes the person who raises you from the root is not a person you can trust, even though every sign around you says you are supposed to. Sometimes the roots start rotting before the tree notices. Sometimes all it takes is watching a mother bird teaching a baby bird how to fly to remind us what our parents are supposed to do. Teach us to fly into a world and learn how to look after ourselves in it too. Not to give you away for the sake of selfish love. Not to lock you away in a tower and rob you of the freedom of who you are. And yeah, I was reading that actually in the middle, on a break in the middle of my shift, and and there were some people waiting at the fish and chip stop, and they probably like looked at me when I was like, oh my god. Like it was a very embarrassing scene, and I'm glad I got on my bike and left as soon as I did. Sentences are so short as well. Like they, I like how she also repeats sometimes. So she's making it clear it's not every parent, first of all, but the sometimes repeating it over and over again, it has that kind of impact. And I did this once with my own writing, not with this novel, but in the past when I was writing something and I was like, I was exhausted from this, I was exhausted from that, and when you really hone in that one word a couple of times, it does have this repeating metaphor when you're exhausted or you're like feeling the weight of this person repeating this word over and over again. And so I liked how she did that, and I love the short sentences of it as well. Like she gets straight to the point, and it has each sentence she ends on has an impact on each one. So I really liked that one. And I would love to be as great as a writer as she is, because it was brilliant, and I'm glad that she so simplistically rounded everything that a parent is supposed to do with their child, but unfortunately some parents aren't like that. The third one, which is The Moon Dragon, I debated my third favourite one, because it's either going to be this one or the Jack and the Beanstalk one, or Sleeping Beauty. I actually really loved the Sleeping Beauty one, but so it was either those. It's either the Moon Dragon, the Jack and the Beanstalk one, that I've forgotten what the title was now at this point, or Sleeping Beauty. And I ultimately chose this one because of this big speech that the woman in the story has at the end, because it's like a a 4-page short story. Like there's a lovely picture. Like she has lovely pictures throughout, and I love each and every one of them. And it's kind of like mixed. Like it starts off as a short story, and then has a little bit of a poem, and then it goes into things that we are experiencing as women in this decade, that we're sort of trying to figure out what we want, and what society thought we should want but we don't actually want anymore, and what the labels that we put on ourselves, and how men sort of perceived us back then, like the view of men towards women is changing, which is great, but I like how she puts this perspective of someone who would be back in those days in this fairy tale-esque world, and brings it attention to our own world and trying to empower women who don't want to be a mother, who don't want to have a husband, who don't want all these things that are supposed to make us happy. Like, obviously some people want to be a wife, some people want to be a mother, and that's great. Like, I want to be a wife and mother one day, like, brilliant, but like, that's not all that you should be, and some people don't want that to be all that they should be. That don't all want to be a wife and mother, and that's okay too. And I really like that story because of that, and I'll get to the quote, and here it is. I exist. Outside of being a mother, wife, sister, daughter, I exist. I exist as a human first, as a being that experiences joy and suffering, beauty and learning, life and tragedy. I exist because the universe chose to put me here for a purpose higher than my relation to men. I exist because a wise old woman gave me a gift, and now to... God, how many ambulances are around here today? I exist because an old wise woman gave me the gift, and now magic runs through my veins. So the problem is not my existence as a half dragon, half girl. The problem is how you perceive it to be, as so small. You do not believe that I can exist at all apart from through my bonds with men. And I love that, not just because it touches upon, like, you know, our worth as a woman if we're not in a relationship, because I have struggled with that personally myself. Like, I'm becoming really empowered recently, and you know, if a relationship happens, it happens, but if it doesn't, it's not meant to be. But I have struggled with that, and I've known other girls who have struggled with that. Oh, I don't have a relationship, I feel so worthless. And I love that in this one quote, in this one speech, she pretty much not only stomps on that kind of like myth, but also stomps on the labels of being a wife, mother, sister, daughter. Like, we are beyond those labels. Like, yes, we're a daughter, yes, we're a sister, yes, we're a wife, mother, but there's so much more to us than those labels, and also so much more to us than our relations to men. Like, there is so much passion and knowledge that we can give out. I don't really know how else to describe it. Like, we are so much more than those labels, and I love that Nikita has done it again, saying something so simplistically. Like, I'm not saying that in a bad way. I think she's done it a beautiful way of doing it. She's done it in a way that really hones in on the fact that we are still, while we're improving as a society, there are still levels that we need to improve on. And I have said in the past, if I do become a mother, I am determined to not let my life be just that title. And I know it will probably be different once I get a child, once I have a child, or if I ever do. But I am determined to make more of myself than that. But it's complicated, because I think society is becoming aware of that, but there are still so many stereotypes embedded in our society as well, is that it is really hard to untangle that, really, and relearn other ways of viewing mothers, of viewing wives, of viewing sisters and daughters and that. Like, we are much more than that. We are writers, we are art, we are painters, we are lawyers. Like, there are so much more levels to us, and to men as well. Like, men are much more of a husband and a father than a son. Like, we exist, and we are so much more than those stamped labels. And I love that I went on to a huge rant about that from this one speech. I don't know if that's what Nikita Gill was trying to get across. Like, that's what I took from it, and I love it either way. And if she was trying to get something else across from it, but either way, I think it's amazing speech, and I love it. I only wish that the ambulance sirens didn't interrupt halfway through, because that really distracted me. I was like... So overall, this is my favourite Nikita Gill book. So yeah, the next the next 3 videos will be centred around Nikita Gill's books. I've got, like I said, I'm reading The Great Goddesses, and then, just looking at my bookshelf, I've got Where Hope Comes From, and I also got The Girl and the Goddess, which I'm probably going to read The Girl and the Goddess first, and then Where Hope Comes From. I literally got Where Hope Comes From on like an impulse buy, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to be reading all the Nikita books first, so I might as well read that one as well. I know she has more, because I've seen one of my housemates with one of them, but those are the 4 books I'm going to be reading from her, and then I'm going to be delving into research after that, so you'll be having some more research based videos in the future. But for the next 3 videos, I keep saying books, but the 3 next books, I suppose, yeah, will be Nikita Gill's books. Sorry if this seemed all over the place. I'm still getting my head around being in front of the camera. Like, I had a plan in my head and I wrote down my plan on my phone, but I didn't really keep to it because I was just rambling on. But yeah, I will become better at this over time. I'm just getting over my fears of being in front of the camera and growing my confidence a bit better. So yeah, I will get better. I've said that's better so many times now. I will improve. There we go. But until next time, which will be Wednesday next week now with my next video on The Great Goddesses by Nikita Gill. But until then, have a lovely rest of the day, and I'll see you soon. Bye!